Welcome to the Finding Your Purpose podcast. My name is Monica Hohe. I'm a psychotherapist, conscious coach, and someone passionate about helping people take steps towards living with clarity and purpose. In my own journey, I followed a non-traditional path from volunteering overseas, working with the homeless, to social work, psychotherapy, and when my children were small, launched the Good Food Initiative to support families and their health. We are living in a time of great change, and with it comes the opportunity to help create something new. I believe that when we find our own unique purpose, we not only live with greater satisfaction, but also contribute meaningfully to the world around us. In this 6-part series, I'll be speaking with individuals who are aligning with their purpose and are an inspiration to others to find theirs. I hope the conversations in this podcast encourage you to find yours. Okay, so my guest today is Joseph McGuire. I knew Joseph many years back, perhaps 30 years back, when he was a shiatsu practitioner and studied other forms of holistic health. He had studied craniosacral therapy and homeopathy. And I always knew him to be a very good, insightful healer. In more recent years, in his bio that he's presented me with, he's also trained in the ancient art of face reading, in the Chinese skill of face reading, and body language. And his primary focus these days is on assisting clients at a senior level with interviewing and behavioural negotiation skills. He said that there's a high level of failure for executives, perhaps up to 50-70%, who aren't getting it right in terms of their interviewing. His strengths are in understanding and communicating with the person behind the title. What's their real intentions, motivations, and goals? So, Joseph, I'm delighted to have you, and it's very interesting, I think, to start with somebody who is an internationally renowned facial profiler and body language expert. There's not many people doing that as far as I see, and I think it's wonderful that you have really strengthened these skills in negotiation, interrogation, and helping senior executives gain insights. So, do you want to say more about that? Did I explain your credentials clear enough?
Oh, that's absolutely fine, Monica. Thank you. Yeah, you can do my PR for now.
So tell us a bit. I mean, that's the story on paper, but tell us what motivated you to move through those different stages of career. You know, you haven't stayed stuck in one thing. You've kept transitioning and doing different things. And what was that thread in that story that led you to move the career several times?
Yeah, it wasn't just one thing, but I've been reading people since I was a small child. I intuitively knew a lot about people from as early as I can remember, like sitting on the floor as a toddler. I just intuitively knew a lot about the adults around me. And then later, my father would bring me to soccer matches, and I could see a lot of the patterns of play that were developing before they happened. And it was just blatantly obvious to me who was going to go where and whose head was going to drop and all of that stuff. So many years later, trained in London, moved to Israel, then moved to London, trained in London as a shiatsu practitioner, but I was introduced to the facial diagnosis from the Chinese medicine. And the Chinese perspective was always that the mind and the body are inseparably connected, which is obviously something that neuroscience is catching up with now. But for me, it was all about communication. And I learned very early on in my practice as a shiatsu practitioner, because I was treating people from all walks of life, some of them very, very successful. But I learned that everybody's wearing a mask. Everybody's creating or crafting a persona, or in some cases, many different personae. And I could always see behind it. So I'm always looking to, more and more now in my own life, I'm looking to drop my own mask, first of all, but also help the people I'm working with to drop theirs and to recognize that they're actually stronger without it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So that's a very interesting story, and it also shows that our purpose sort of grows and develops and unravels as we mature and evolve. And that's incredible, the link between the therapy, the craniosacral, and now the face reading. And of course, I think you and I would agree, and that perhaps leads us on to the second question I was going to ask you. What's your view on the relevance of purpose now? You know, and you've hinted at it there by saying, well, maybe it's time for more of us to get real and to get authentic. And, you know, so my question was around, where does purpose fit in these days? And
yeah, well, I have conversations with people from so many different areas, different walks of life, from so-called ordinary people to extremely successful business people and business people in different countries, different areas. And increasingly, when we get beyond the strict business dimension of the conversation and we start talking about ourselves and our lives, people are opening up to me in a very different way than they were 3-4 years ago. And people are talking about the meaning of life for them. and what they're really about, because it's not just about creating, earning money or bringing in money or creating a new product or whatever that might be. It's about why they're really here. And it's gratifying to have those conversations on the one hand, because people are being more real, more authentic, and recognizing from within, deep within themselves, how important it is, and the sense of their own fulfillment in communicating more freely and with a greater sense of lightness of being. And I'm finding that myself, as I'm having those conversations, it's calling on me to recognize how I've held myself back and the many layers of conditioning I've carried, and we're all carrying in our different ways. And it's just time to let go of that and do a lot of, if you like, unlearning as much as anything.
That is fascinating, because I was thinking face reading, yeah, so what? But you're saying that actually through this skill that you have, that you're working with people around going deeper into themselves and finding more of their authentic selves and going beyond the mask. Wow. And then would you say that also then is helping them unravel their purpose?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, because one of the things I've learned I'm probably bringing more of my therapeutic background into the work now than I was probably a few years ago. And a lot of that involves listening and not speaking, or just asking very pertinent questions and staying silent, and using those questions and the silence strategically to help bring people to their own realization that I'm not telling them what they should do, see, be, or any of that. It's helping them to recognize, oh, this is where I've been holding myself back.
Amazing. And in my work, as you probably know, as a psychotherapist, I come from a different perspective. Some people are coming saying, I'm dissatisfied and things aren't working and I'm not getting on with my boss or whatever. But you're very interesting to see that there's so many ways to come at this. And so what about finding your purpose? Where does that, so you're helping people become more authentic, more real. Is it a good thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Very, very relevant question. And there will be people who will have exactly that approach. So what? It doesn't matter. I'm successful.
Yes.
So, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm not interested. Yes. Absolutely. But the reality is we're all here for a short time. No matter how long we live, it's a short time. At the end of life, it's a short time. Yeah. And I've never come across anybody towards the end of life who says, I wish I'd earned more. I wish I'd worked harder. I wish I'd bought more cars or whatever it is. There's always that. And again, more and more, I'm having those conversations with people. And again, some very, very successful people where they're acknowledging, I recognize the need to look deeper within and to realize there were so many areas of my own life I wasn't satisfied. And they're openly admitting it. They're not necessarily having those conversations, in a broad public sphere, but they're having them on a private level. And they're acknowledging, yeah, I'm immensely successful, but there's something missing.
Amazing.
And there's something that I can't avoid.
Wonderful. And I think that you and I then also feel that whilst all the other stuff is going on and wars and so many problems in the world, that it's now time to build a new map and live more from the inside out and listen in to what does make our hearts sing. What are we here to do? What is our piece in the jigsaw? And that's wonderful to hear that those people that you're working with are looking for more satisfaction. And I think that's what's happening in the world, that more people are stepping up to what are we here to do, how can we contribute, and how can we come from our hearts. And I know that that's also something I see that you write about and stuff. And the Heart Math is all about that. That I don't know what you want to say more about leadership and heart. And you wrote something recently about that.
Yeah, well, I suppose there are several potential aspects to that conversation or even the question. But we've experienced so much turmoil in the world in recent years, and it doesn't surprise me in the slightest that has been happening, because there has been a dissatisfaction that's been emerging in people's lives over a good many years. It's not just what's apparent now in the last, like we had the whole COVID thing, we have these wars, etc. But there's been a dissatisfaction building over many, many years. We can see patterns there. And what we're seeing now is an absence of leadership, true leadership. We have people in leadership roles who are not capable or not willing to actually lead in a meaningful way and to foster the development, the improvement of people's lives on a daily basis. They're more concerned with power. So there is a growing need and growing clamor as well from, if you like, from beneath for leadership. But we have to recognize that we have to be our own leaders. Exactly, the Gandhi thing, be the change you want to see in the world. We're called on to, increasingly what I'm finding is we're called on to be our own leaders.
Fantastic. Absolutely. And that's where the hope is. Absolutely. Do you have any tips for our listeners about how they might to identify more, figure out what their own purpose is. I think that in this series as well, we'll be looking for actually practical tips, around how do you find your own purpose? What do you hear? What's your part in the jigsaw?
Yeah, I don't know that there's one. There's probably many, and it'll vary from person to person. But certainly writing, journaling is very important.
Absolutely.
And to create a quiet space to allow yourself to journal and to not edit what you're writing, just to allow whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking about to write itself. And when you think you've finished, continue writing.
Wonderful.
Because
Very
that's
good.
when the real stuff is likely to emerge. And that's where you're likely to start facing yourself and realizing there's something missing. No matter who you are, no matter what's going on in life, in most cases, you'll find there's something missing. There's something I haven't addressed, something I feel, and you'll usually feel it in your body when you're writing it. That's what I found. When you're at that place, you'll feel it in your body somewhere. There's a tension in your body. There's a knot. There's a discomfort. And if you can pay attention to that, that's something I've really learned over the years. If you can pay attention to your body and even put your hand on the area that's uncomfortable or painful and just ask it the question, a very simple question. What's your highest intention for me? You may not get an answer immediately, but you may get an answer when you're going shopping or when you're having a shower later. And pay attention to the answer, because the answer is usually very, very real indeed, whether you like it or not.
That's wonderful, Joseph. And it also shows how you have integrated all your experiences through the body work, starting off with the massage and the cranial work, and then the face reading and the negotiation skills, and that you've really pulled them all together into something that's very timely now as we move through this huge evolutionary changes that are around. And of course, I've always, like yourself, always followed threads. And I used to find the expression very helpful, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, because the world needs people to come alive. And it's almost like that listening, God, I love doing this, so I'm probably on the right track.
Yeah.
So, Joseph, that's all really very interesting. And I was just thinking then you were saying about you're working with these senior executives and they're wanting to get to know themselves better and they're wanting to find more about who their authentic selves is. And then, my thoughts are, does that affect their business? Do they have more successful businesses, or are their staff happier? Are their employees happier? What is the benefits of, I know, so we're saying it's almost like a societal thing that people are wanting to listen in more and be their authentic selves. But how will that benefit? How could we persuade a senior executive that it is a good idea to find out more about themselves and listen in? What are the benefits?
Yeah, well, the reports are there. This is not just nice to have or, soft skills, which a term I absolutely hate because it's all human skills anyway. Yeah. But the reports are there. You look at heavyweights like McKinsey, Gallup, Forbes, and they're reporting, and this has been going on for several years, that the levels where companies are experiencing a lack of trust from the bottom up, from the workforce. And it's impacting performance, it's impacting productivity, it's impacting the absenteeism levels, customer satisfaction. So the companies who are managing to maintain and build success are actually paying attention to the importance of communication with empathy, actually bringing in initiatives to build trust in the workplace so that the employees actually feel, and there's such a key word here, feel respected, feel heard, feel listened to, feel appreciated. And it's not just the perks, the nice lunch and all of that. It's the actual communication that happens from the top down. And that's improving performance levels. And what I'm hearing is that the CEOs, the leaders, are actually finding a sense of relief that there was a burden they were carrying because they were trying to push things along. It was all about productivity, numbers, KPIs. And when they ease the burden on themselves and they communicate more effectively and more openly and with more empathy, performance actually goes up.
Right. And that all comes from, in your world, this working with people around unmasking their facial gestures and who they really are, so they don't have to work at being something else. They're actually more aligned with who they are, and therefore people feel better, they trust them more, they're working better. Very interesting. I used to do a lot of workplace wellness, and you go in and give talks on stress management and, meditation and mindfulness and all of that. And I don't do it anymore because I don't think that's what it's about anymore. And it is about these other things. How do you improve communication? How do you share your values and what you're about? And obviously, the Gen Z and the millennials are very much into, what's that company doing? What's their mission statement? I've had people coming to me saying, I left that company, so they didn't know what they're about. They had no mission statement. And so it is definitely, this is what the new generation are wanting as well. They want to know what's real And I think that's definitely an ethos and what's real, and but it's funny, I was talking to a client about says, oh yeah, these Gen Zs are great, and yes, they do want the work to have meaning and they want to know, particularly for the manager to know what the purpose is. But she said she couldn't believe it that there was a meeting at 9 and so this 20-something wandered in at 10 and said, oh sorry, I slept through it. Mm-hmm. It's not something our generation would do. So that's the downside of this being authentic and real. But they didn't say make up anything. I'm sorry, I slept through the alarm clock.
Yeah, but that's another problem that's occurring in workforces, that we grew up in a generation where you had to perform. You had to perform. And if you were in a competition, there was first place, second place, third place, and nobody else got a medal. And now it's changed where everybody gets a medal, everybody's acclaimed, everybody's applauded. And so many companies now are reporting the Gen Z, they can't accept feedback, they can't handle criticism, and they don't know how to take responsibility. And that's a problem that's occurring. Yeah. So that's not really being authentic. That's right. People who haven't been prepared for life. Yeah. And life as we know it is going to present challenges, no matter who you are. And the challenge is an opportunity to grow. The challenge is not there to crush us. It's an opportunity to grow beyond the limits we've allowed to be imposed on ourselves.
Yeah. And so, yes, thank you. And the excuse that I just slept through the meeting, I mean, you or I would have pretended or not gone in, we've been so embarrassed, but this person wandered in. But so I think you're right. So that's good in one way, they can be authentic, but they also need to learn the consequences. If you've got an important job, you can't just say I slept through it. But I definitely think this whole authenticity is coming in big waves, and companies a lot of them are stepping up into more sort of less top-down, more inclusive, better communication, people being involved in what the company is about, the mission statement, etc., and it's all for the good. Just finally, Joseph, then, I've seen you talk about loneliness and this epidemic of loneliness. I'm just wondering, do you think that is related to this notion of purpose and people digging deeper into themselves? Can we join that up, do you think? Is it related?
I think so, yeah. Certainly a lot of psychologists have been reporting this over the last number of years. Obviously, we know when we had the whole pandemic scenario that people were isolated and the reports of domestic violence, etc., went up, divorce rates, etc. And the sense of isolation people were feeling and then starting to talk about, that has become much more public. And for me, that presents... And it can be immensely painful, there's no question about it. And I don't underestimate the pain levels people are feeling. But it's a wonderful opportunity to grow, to recognize that, if I'm feeling lonely, if I'm feeling isolated, where am I feeling it? How am I feeling it? What can I do about it? Because it's not enough. Believe me, I've been through enough of my own stuff to know that we can easily have a tendency to isolate ourselves and wallow. Yeah. And it doesn't serve. But when we recognize it's an opportunity to stretch ourselves, it's an opportunity to grow beyond whatever pain we're experiencing, and to recognize that there's at least one next positive step we can take, whatever that might be, then we have an opportunity to become more aligned with who we actually really are beneath all the conditioning, beneath the mask, behind the mask, and we can connect with, again, a greater sense of purpose. But it does take that willingness to face whatever we're feeling, acknowledge it, and then take whatever the next step might be to come forward from that.
Fantastic. And I would also add to that I think, so we might be in a room full of 10 people, but if we're not actually authentically connecting to them, and if we're not bringing our real selves, then we may still well be lonely and that we're not really making a real connection. And I think I was telling you the other, informally there, that the other aspect of this connection with each other in a more real way is that ability to be in a room on our own. Who was it that said that part of the problem with mankind is that we're not able to sit in the room on our own? So and I was telling you the story. I had a really busy day yesterday, met loads of people, but I still came home and was sitting on my own and thinking, and my challenge is to actually be with myself, to be in the richness of all that I'm feeling and not feeling and whatever, but to be able to connect in with ourselves in the present moment. I think that's also all part of this, being able to be with ourselves and each other in a real and connected way, really is.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be grateful for what we actually do have.
Yes.
That's one of the lessons I've been learning of late. I've been slow to come to it, but it's one of the lessons I've learned to actually be grateful for what we do have rather than focus on what we don't have. And if we focus on what we do have, then our life automatically becomes richer. And again, we have that sense of purpose as well.
Absolutely. And it can bring us closer to what we want if we're satisfied with what we have. And it can enrich us with those feelings of gratitude for what we have. Thank you very much. I'm very intrigued with your journey and how you've actually come back to something that's very timely now in this stage in your career of help, negotiation skills and face reading and really helping people uncover the masks and bring more of themselves to the world. Fantastic. Well done. Is there anything else you want to add? Or?
Oh, there's always more.
But maybe also then how can people, if they want to hear more, you have a LinkedIn page?
Yeah, I'm most active on LinkedIn and it's Joseph McGuire -Face Facts. So if you reach out to me, I'm happy to connect and let's see where the conversation goes from there.
Fantastic. And your Clear Sight Communications?
Yes, my website is definitely behind the times, but LinkedIn is the place to really connect with me.
Yeah, and you're certainly not behind the times yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph.
Thank you, Monica.